Zechariah 8. And the word of Yahweh of hosts came, saying, Thus said Yahweh of hosts, I shall be jealous for Tzion with great jealousy, with great wrath I shall be jealous for her. Um, this, I don't know, but to me, this is like, once again, very clear cut and understandable and right. However, I have heard and I know there are people who read this and do not understand it because the only way that they can, for some reason, imagine jealousy is in an evil, toxic way. So they believe that by Yahweh saying this, he's evil and toxic, which is completely wrong, of course, and blasphemous. So there are people who, for some reason, either they don't know what love is or they are trying to fool themselves, but they act like there is no such thing as righteous jealousy, in the sense of with Yahweh, he uses these terms because also if we think of jealousy as, or this zeal, I think is a better word in this case for what I'm trying to say, um, comes from true love and commitment. When there is commitment, then there's place for jealousy or zeal. And with right, so therefore righteous zeal. Because if Yahweh, once again, like I said, is above all emotions, of course, but there's a reason why he uses these words, and he even says that he is this way, because obviously in his realm there's nothing that is evil or bad. Everything that is wicked came from the darkness that was created by the lack of his light. So when Yahweh tries to tell us stuff, many times he uses terms so that we may understand what he's trying to tell us from our point of view. And that is kind of like, because this is another explanation that I've heard is like kind of saying, no, he's not jealous, but he says it that way so that you may understand it. And that's not true either, because Yahweh is not going to say something that is false just to uh, prove a point, because that is not the best way to prove a point, by saying something that is not true. So he is truth itself. As we know, Yahushua said, I am the truth, the way, and the life. He is righteousness, and he is one. So, for instance, when somebody says that there's two, that's wrong. And I'm sure one feels bad, right? It's like, what you talking about? You don't know mathematics, right? So Yahweh Echad, Yahweh is one. When he made his, well, I'm going to jump all the way to his congregation, the people of Israel, he chose his people and he gave the Torah to us, saying, if you accept it, you're pretty much accepting a marriage right here, right? This is a pact. So we said, yes, we will do and we will hear what is in the contract. So we made a pact with him. So now Yahweh is married to his congregation. Yahweh tells his congregation, do not worship images, do not do certain things. And I will give you everything, everything. But then the congregation decided to go after demons, after false angels, etc., worshiping them, praying in their name. And that is pretty much like having intimacy with them. And therefore, it represents what, well, the scripture speaks about fornication, about the great whore of Babylon and the wine of her fornication, which is idolatry. So when Yahweh speaks about being jealous, is because his people with whom he married, he made a pact, they are going after false Elohim and therefore being adulterous. So that's why he speaks about jealousy. Like I always mention, I think the most simple example of the jealousy that we see, for instance, and to that, for that, I'm going to go to another verse in Exodus 34:14. For you do not bow yourselves to another mighty one, for Yahweh, whose name is jealous, is a jealous El, a jealous mighty one, whose name is jealous. So he's jealous of his name. So when you call on a different name, you're calling on a different person, and that produces jealousy. Because that is like if like Yahushua said, when you're gonna pray, go and close the door, do it in private, which is something that you also like do with your wife in private. You have intimacy, and when a person goes to pray, he prays and invokes a certain name, and that name should be the name of the mighty one you want to be one with, just like when the couple becomes one in bed. So imagine if a wife during that moment that is so special all of a sudden calls on a different name than that of her husband. That is obviously going to provoke a lot of jealousy, and that is what we see being represented by these verses, because that's pretty much what happens spiritually when a person worships a different name thinking it is his mighty one or the one of the scriptures. For you do not bow yourselves to another mighty one, for Yahweh, whose name is jealous, is a jealous mighty one. So now going back here, thus said Yahweh of hosts, I shall be jealous for Tzion with great jealousy, with great wrath I shall be jealous for her. Thus said Yahweh, I shall return to Tzion, and I shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. This is interesting because of a couple things. Obviously, well, I'll read it and then explain. Remember that every prophecy has different levels of interpretation and different times in which a fulfillment would have happened. So we could say that spiritually, he is everywhere, right? He's omnipresent. So in that sense, he has never left as to return, right? So since it is mentioned in the verse that he shall return, then that means that he's not talking in a spiritual sense, because spiritually he's everywhere as to like to move. Like if you're everywhere, why would you need to move, right? So I shall return means that he left, and before Mashiach, this can be interpreted like his spirit was with us, but because of our sins, the spirit left. Okay. His presence in the temple, his presence with us, his help, etc. But it obviously becomes more well, pretty much, yeah, clear with thinking of Mashiach, who came in the flesh and said he would return, right? Because once again, even though I mentioned that his presence, his spirit, he is omnipresent. Although we see parts in scriptures when he would pull back pretty much because of our sins. So I repeat, before Mashiach, that's what he meant. But after Mashiach comes in the flesh and then returns to the Father, he says that he would come back. But that refers to, as we have seen many times, how Yahweh said, I am the first and the last, two manifestations. So it says, thus said Yahweh, I shall return to Tzion. So we could see this as something to be fulfilled in the end times after he has already been in Tzion, but left, right? Yahushua came already and left. So now Yahweh is saying, I shall return. And I say that not just because of the return word, but because of what it says afterwards. And I shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, right? He dwelt in, in Galil, right? In Israel, But now he's saying that he's going to dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. I repeat, the way the Jewish people would see it, mainly since they don't accept Mashiach, would be the temple in Israel, right? He was in the middle of Jerusalem, in the temple. So, and I shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall be called city of the truth. Remember, Yahushua said, I am the truth. And it's interesting that Yahushua is a son of David, well, a descendant of David, right? And Jerusalem was called the city of David, but now it's the city of truth, right? Because Yahushua, a descendant of David in the flesh, but the root of David in the spirit, becomes now the Melech HaMelechim, the King of Kings, and therefore that city will be the city of truth. And the mountain of Yahweh of hosts, the set apart mountain. Verse 3, so Jerusalem, Ir HaEmet, the city of truth. Ir HaEmet. And the mount of Yahweh of hosts, Har HaKodesh, mount, set apart mountain. So, thus said Yahweh of hosts, again, all men and all women shall dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, each one with his staff and his hand because of great age. I said it wrong, my bad. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, again, all men and all women shall dwell in the streets of Jerusalem, each one with his staff in his hand because of great age. And the streets of the city shall be filled with boys and girls playing in the streets. Now, obviously, this was fulfilled already during the time of the Second Temple. And then it will be fulfilled, but not exactly, because obviously it's talking about old people needing a staff to walk because of their great age. And obviously in eternity, it's not like we're going to need help to walk if we get old, because it's eternal life. We're not going to have any issues, any problems, any pain, any weakness. But we could interpret this, like I said, has many levels, in a spiritual sense, because those of great age will be great in spiritual stature, pretty much. So the staff would make reference to their authority, right? With their authority in their hand because of their great age. So that is a way of interpreting this, referring to the Shabbat, the millennium, or even afterwards in eternity. And the streets of the city shall be filled with boys and girls playing in the streets. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, if it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of these people in these days, should it also be marvelous in my eyes, declares Yahweh of hosts. I love this verse, because the same goes once again for our time and our situation. Every promise by Yahweh, everything that is about to be fulfilled, well, thankfully, Yahweh gave us emunah in order to believe in it, because I'm sure most of us do believe in it with all our heart, all our mind, right? And even so, sometimes we think about how Yahweh is going to do a certain thing, and we say, we have no idea. I don't know how he's going to do that, but I know he can, right? So we see here how it says, thus said Yahweh of hosts, if it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of his people in these days, the remnant, right, the chosen few, in his time, those who were still alive. In our time, it refers to the chosen few from those who are called. So if it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of these people in these days, that would be, if it is different, I mean, if it is difficult to be done, and in our eyes means, it becomes so marvelous to think about it or to imagine how it would come about. Obviously, that doesn't happen to Yahweh. He has no issue to do anything he wants. He can do anything at any time in many ways. Even if it is impossible in our reality, he has even infinite ways to do a certain thing that may be impossible in this reality. So should it also be marvelous in my eyes, declares Yahweh of hosts. Once again, a rhetorical question, meaning not at all. Verse 6. Yeah, if it is marvelous in your eyes, in the eyes of the remnant of the people, this. There uses this verb when it says, well, it says marvelous. Yipale. Yipale. You see how it has the root pele? Pele, that is also the root of what we read in root when it says peloni almoni. I don't remember how they translated in English. When when Boaz calls the other redeemer that could redeem Ruth, calls him peloni almoni, which refers in Hebrew to a name which is not mentioned either for the honor of the person or the opposite. But when a name is not mentioned, they would use those two words, peloni almoni, and peloni refers to somebody who is wonderful. That's why here we see this same thing, marvelous. So thus said Yahweh of hosts, if it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of these people in these days, should it also be marvelous in my eyes, declares Yahweh of hosts. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, see, I am saving my people from the land of the sunrise and from the land of the sunset. Right? Which is where we are at the moment. And I shall bring them back, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim in truth and in righteousness. That's right. And they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim in truth and in righteousness. First and last. 8. Be'emet ubitzedekah. Ubitzedekah. Tzedakah. All right. So in truth and in righteousness. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, let your hands be strong, you who are listening in these days to these words. How perfect, right? How it is written and how it fits. From the mouth of the prophets of the day, the foundation was laid for the house of Yahweh of hosts, the Hekal that was to be rebuilt, the temple that was to be rebuilt. For before these days, there was not a wage for a man, not a hire for a beast, and there was no peace for him who went out or came in because of his enemies. And I said, all men one against another. But now I am not as in the former days. But now I am not as in the former days to the remnant of these people, declares Yahweh of hosts. Right? So Yahweh is turning things. He's going to change everything. Now for his remnant, meaning the chosen few. And you know how he was talking about the previous verses about how bad it has been for our people, which that's true statement, right? From all the way back to, I repeat, coming out of the land of Israel because of our sins, even there, all of the things that we see in the scriptures. Sadly, and obviously, not talking about it as a people, but even as individuals, each of us has been through certain things that if it wasn't for Yahweh, we wouldn't be here. And that is just because he is preparing this that he's saying right here, and he's going to change everything around very soon. In fact, as it is saying now. But now I am not as in the former days to the remnant of these people, declares Yahweh of hosts. Obviously, now it is through Yahushua HaMashiach. Because of the sowing of peace, the vine does give its fruit. The ground does give her increase, and the heavens do give their due. And I shall cause the remnant of these people to inherit all these. right? This obviously in the time when it was said, it was mainly referring to going back to the land, being able to get food from the land, being able to live in Israel, etc. But now, when we see this in a spiritual sense, obviously, thankfully, Yahweh will do the same regarding the land, but that is secondary to what he's going to do spiritually. So, because of the sowing of peace, and in fact, this shows that he's talking metaphorically, the sowing of peace, right? Remember that Yahushua said, I did not come to bring peace, I came to bring division. So, the last is the one that comes to bring peace. And that's why when Mashiach came, they thought he was the prophet like Moshe, that he was the last, and that's why they were expecting him to bring peace, and that's why he had to say, I did not come to bring peace. Because just like nowadays, because of the false doctrines, most people don't understand anything about the first and the last, and therefore the second manifestation, how it will be. Back in the day, they didn't understand about the first manifestation, and that's why they didn't accept Mashiach, because they were expecting the prophecies of the end times to manifest in that time. So as Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah says, that there will be a prophet who will prophesy peace, and that peace will manifest. And that prophet, when that prophet manifests and says that there will be peace, and the peace happens, then that is the prophet that Yahweh sent. And that is talking about the prophet like Moshe that would come at the very end to introduce his people to the millennium, the Shabbat, in which there will be peace for 1,000 years before eternity. So it says, because of the sowing of peace, the vine does give its fruit. Once there is peace, Israel, the vine, will give fruit in this world. The ground does give her increase. We will multiply, as we see also in the book of Isaiah. And the heavens do give their due. So the heavens will continue to give blessings and revelation and understanding. And by that time, we will have all knowledge. So imagine if man can do what he can do with the lack of knowledge that he has, imagine when we have all knowledge of everything in nature and everything else, but just having all knowledge in nature, what we could do and how good we will be able to live. And remember that nowadays things are bad because the people that rule are wicked. But things could be very, very nice with the lack of knowledge that humans have. Things would be very, very good for the environment, which is one of the main uh issues as people think. But in every sense, pretty much. So in fact, humanity has been better in many times in history before our time, even though that's not what they tell us, of course. So it says, and the heavens do give their due, and I shall cause the remnant of these people to inherit all this. And it shall be as you were a curse among the nations, O house of Yehudah and house of Israel. So I shall save you, and you shall be a blessing. Do not fear, let your hands be strong. So, and it shall be as you were a curse among the nations. This is a beautiful blessing. What is about to come, not the curse. This is a beautiful verse. And in fact, I was just thinking about one very similar to this one. So here it is. Because Yahweh told us in Deuteronomy that we would be cursed if we didn't follow the commandments, and that we will be um, dispersed throughout all the nations, and we will be a curse in those nations, and people would hate us, etc., etc. And that's why all the things that have happened to our people, even the fact that they have stolen our identity. So just like we have been a curse among the nations, now that's gonna turn the other way, and we will be a blessing. As he says, and it shall be as you were a curse among the nations, O house of Yahudah, that refers to the chosen few, and house of Israel, that refers to the many. So I shall save you, and you shall be a blessing. I shall save you, right, through Yahushua, and you shall be a blessing once the end happens through the last. Do not fear, let your hands be strong. Very important. Hands represent our deeds. So we need to strengthen ourselves in Mashiach in order to act as we are supposed to be ready for what is coming. And that was verse 13. Eldad by Israel. You see, Oshia. Certainly, I will save you. I will save you. Oshia. Um, well, this is for the first person future. And then we have Oshia, which are 4 letters of the name Yahushua. This Shia right here is obviously where you can see the root Shua, which is salvation. So you would only need a letter Hey right there to get the name of Mashiach. If we take this one, take it to the front, and then just add the letter Hey, we have Yahushua, which erroneously they say Joshua, but you guys already know about that. So, Oshia etchem, then Berakah. So, yeah, blessing. All right. So, and you shall be a blessing. Do not fear. Important. For thus said Yahweh of hosts, as I purpose to do, this is also beautiful, the whole thing. And it's kind of saying, we could say the same, obviously, it's not exactly the same thing, and it gives more and more revelation. But just like we know that there is a need for 2 or 3 witnesses, according to the law, so Yahweh says this in several different ways to make sure we understand and believe that this is a fact. For thus said Yahweh of hosts, as I purpose to do evil to you when your fathers provoked me, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I did not relent, so again in these days I have purpose to do good to Jerusalem and to the house of Yahudah. Do not fear. It repeats, do not fear, do not fear, right? Very important, not to fear. And if he says it, it's for a reason. Obviously, first of all, because if he who knows everything says this, is because we shouldn't fear. Second, if he says this, is because the world and the enemy will try to make us fear everything possible, as we know and we saw the past few years through the media. It says, for thus say Yahweh of hosts, I purpose to do evil to you when your fathers provoked me, right? As he did bring so many punishments, so much judgment upon Israel because of our sins, declared Yahweh of hosts, and I did not relent. So again, in these days, which mainly refers to the end times, I have purpose to do good to Jerusalem and to the house of Yahudah. You see how it doesn't mention Israel here? Only Yahudah, because it refers to the few, as I mentioned when we read over here, Yahudah and Israel. Now it just mentions Yahudah, meaning the chosen few. Another important, interesting thing is remember that Yahushua is the tree of life. Yahushua is the tree of life. So much so that, well, he said, I am the life. And he resurrected. And he was hanged from a tree in the shape of a cross, but it was wood. In Hebrew, wood, tree, and other words similar to that have the same term in Hebrew, which is etz. So he was, according to Deuteronomy, because of the prophecy or the law that was there that would manifest as a prophecy, we know that he was hanged from an etz, a tree, a wooden cross. So here, this makes reference to the other tree, the tree of good and evil. Well, not of good and evil, but of the knowledge of good and evil. When Eve, Chava, ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, sin entered this world so that we could know what evil is. And we have throughout time, throughout history. And that's why now it says, and it's I purpose to do evil, as in you wanted to know what evil and good was. Okay, you went through evil already. As I purpose to do evil to you when your fathers provoked me, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I did not relent. So again, in these days, I have purpose to do good. So now comes the good from the tree of good and evil. Remember that just like Yahushua the first is the tree of life, the last is the tree of knowledge. And he comes as the prodigal son. So he gets to know both sides of this reality because he is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So since he manifests, which is the same he that brings peace to the world, according to Yirmiyahu, he will bring peace, and then the good of Yahweh will manifest in the world and in the lives of the chosen few mainly. So I was saying, for thus said Yahweh of hosts, as I purpose to do evil to you when your fathers provoked me, declares Yahweh of hosts, and I did not relent. So again, in these days, I have purpose to do good. So that is wonderful, wonderful news. Great to know. And obviously, this is something very important also to think about. But obviously, the flesh and the human mind and this reality will fight against this thought that I'm about to say. But if it is true, and we know it is because of history, that Yahweh actually punished in such a bad way our people throughout history, then we should believe that this second part is going to be fulfilled as well. And that is a certainty. And we are closer than obviously we have ever been to the fulfillment of it. So again, in these days, I have purposed to do good to Jerusalem. And even though there was certain good done to Jerusalem in the time of the Second Temple, it does not compare to the good that comes after the end of this first 6,000 years of sin. And that is to what it refers mainly. So again, in these days, I have purpose to do good to Jerusalem and to the house of Yahudah. Do not fear. So we shouldn't fear, and we should also keep this in mind. And if a certain time, in certain moment in time, we think is harder than it should, whatever is happening, whatever test, then we can call on our Father and ask him and tell him that we remember this promise. Remember that even ZecharYah means the one whom Yahweh remembers. So we can also remind Yahweh of these promises and the fact that we heard his call through Yahushua. So these are the words you should do. These are the words you should do. This is interesting. The words you should do. In Hebrew, the word, let's see if it is davar, just to make sure. 16. Eile hadevarim, yes. Hadevarim, the words that tazu, that you should do. Dabru emet, speak truth. Every man to his friend. Truth and judgment, shalom, peace. All right, so I wanted to see that one because devarim or dabar in Hebrew, which is word, devarim is the plural of it. Dabar not only means a word, but also a thing. So I'm sure certain translations maybe have done it that way. These are the things you should do. But when we know that Yahweh made everything through the word, Yahushua is the word. And remember, well, now since I started talking about that, let's go to this is the word. Dabar. Nothing. I can't believe that they are translated it as nothing. Not even thing, right? Let me see what it's going to say when I write this. Nothing, right? Because this is nothing. Dabar is either word or something. Let's say if I put this, so that should confirm it, right, to you guys who are watching. So yeah. So this is my word because I added the yud, but dabar, as you guys know, this is the letter dalet, which represents a door. A door. You see? Door. Dalet. All right. So that letter represents a door. Yahushua said, I am the door. Now I'm gonna put a space and then add the bar. I'm gonna delete the dalet. And let's see what it says. Oh well. And that may be because we have it in Hebrew. I don't think I have done this, but let's see if no, it doesn't have Aramaic. But bar in Aramaic is sun, right? So the door, the dalet, is the sun. The door is the sun. And the sun is the word, davar. So I will say it in another way. Dabar means word. Sadly, this is not doing a good job, but dabar means word. And it is made up by the letter dalet, which is a door, and the word bar, which means sun. So in the word, dabar in Hebrew, we have the representation of the door is the sun, meaning the way to get to the Father is the Son, and He is the Word. In fact, if we do a separation of each of the letters, remember that the bet is a house. The bet is a house, like I just did with the other word. That's a daughter, but I put this. This is a house or a home, right? So that is the letter bet. That represents the temple of Yahweh. So the door to the temple is the head of the congregation. That is Mashiach, who is the word, who is the son, who is the door. All of that I just said in just one word of 3 letters in Hebrew. All right. So going back here, it was saying, these are the words you should do. So when we see it this way translated, and when we understand that in Hebrew, the word for thing and for word is the same, I think, at least me, it helps to understand the spiritual world in a better sense, because everything is a word. Everything started as a word that, when manifested, became a thing, right? So every word is made up of letters, which were capsules pretty much that Yahweh made with his light. That was the residue within the space that became when he contracted his light in order to make time and space. So there was a residue of life which was encapsulated into the 22 letters of the alphabet. In fact, 44, because there were 2 alphabets, one for the heavens, one for the earth. And then Yahweh united the letters to make things. Once he spoke those things into existence, they became a reality, they manifested, And Yahushua is that word that Yahweh used to create everything. So every word is a thing, because through the word, the things were created. Everything was created. And that's why everything has a name. That name represents the whole of the thing, because everything began in the mind of Yahweh as a thought, and then became a word, and then the voice, and then reality manifested as we can experience it. So these are the words you should do. Speak the truth to one another. Judge with true and right ruling for peace in your gates. Once again, confirming what we read in the previous chapter when they were asking about fasting, and Yahweh just tells them this. These are the words you should do. Speak the truth to one another. Judge with truth and right ruling for peace in your gates. And do not plot evil in your heart against another. And do not love a false oath. For all these I hate, declares Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh of hosts came to me, saying, Thus said Yahweh of hosts, the fast of the 4th, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th month. So Yahweh is now answering the question from the beginning of the previous chapter, right? And they were asking about one of the months. Yahweh is telling about all of the months, like saying, yeah, you asked me about one, but now I'm telling you about all of them. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, the fast of the 4th, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th are to be joy and gladness and pleasant appointed times for the house of Yahudah, and they shall love the truth and the peace. First and last, Yahushua came and said, I am the truth, but he said, I did not come to bring peace. So the last comes to bring peace, and therefore he could say, I am the peace. So the truth and the peace, which is interesting also because Yahushua is the truth, right? And if we take away the Aleph, which is the first letter of the alphabet, and therefore represents Yahushua as the first, that's why it's the first letter of truth, but also represents Yahweh as the Father, as the one, Yahweh who is one. So if we take away Yahweh or Mashiach, Yahushua the first, all we have is dead, right? So the truth without Mashiach would be a lie, would be death, right? There is no truth without Mashiach. Mashiach is the truth. That's why he's the beginning of it. And that's why he is the one who gives life to the truth. Because if you take away him, the first, and Yahweh, who is one, then you only have death, right? Now, here also, like, sadly, we cannot see the pictographic alphabet, but you would be able to see here the strong or the strength of the first who came as the water of life, being Mashiach, died on the cross. In fact, let's just see, dead. How did Mashiach die? Mashiach on a cross. That's how he died. The water of life on the cross. Remember that the letter Tav in the pictographic is a cross. The Mem is the first letter of Mashiach, and it's a letter that represents water. So just the word dead in Hebrew, met, you can see how the main death of history, the most important death in history, because it will be the one that will bring life to all who believe in him, would be the death of Mashiach on the cross. And that's exactly the word for dead. I hope that's understood, because I do believe it's very unbelievable. And I know you cannot see it there that well because it's not the pictographic alphabet, but most of you, I think, know. And let me see for those who may not. So let's see, let's use this one for instance. Let's see if it works. Um, so pixelated, but you see how the tab right here says tau? We were using this letter right here, but I was mentioning the cross because the tab is the cross. The mem right here, oh no, that's the samech. The mem right here is water. This is not the pictographic alphabet, that was just symbols. This could work as the pictographic is not really exactly like this. This is more square, but yeah, well, pretty much like this, yeah. So he would have the tav as the cross and the mem as water, right? The waves of water. So the water of life on the cross. Mashiach on the cross. That's the word for dead. And I believe that's very amazing. How perfect Hebrew is, and that's why that is the heavenly language. Yahushua is the word. So he is found in every word. No matter what word we look at in Hebrew, we'll be able to see the story of Mashiach in one way or another in it. So another one that I wanted to see was shalom, because he mentioned truth and shalom, right? They use it nowadays as hello, but you know, it means peace. And remember that Shlomo, or let's see if it says Shlomo, it's both. Yeah. The son of David, his name means shalom. All we got to do is take away the hey and put here the vav, and we have shalom. So Shlomo is the peace. Yahushua came and he asked the Pharisees, who do you say Messiah is? The son of whom? And they said the son of David. And he said, how can he be the son of David if David himself calls him sovereign in Psalm 110? So Yahushua was trying to tell them that he is the root of David as the truth in this verse that we just read, the truth and the peace. So that would be as David and Shlomo, because Shlomo is the peace. Shlomo means peace. And Shlomo is the son of David. So Shlomo, in that sense, represents the coming of the last who brings peace, the shalom. And in fact, let's also, you see how shalom, unlike emet, has the letter mem, but the final letter mem, the final form, which is when everything will be fulfilled. That's why it's closed in all the corners, unlike the other mem, same letter, but when it appears somewhere else, it's open, because Mashiach came when things were still needed to be done in order to fulfill everything, as in the end times. So interesting that it has that mem, which is also the mem of Mashiach, as Mashiach ben Yehuda, Mashiach ben Yosef. Also interesting that it begins with the letter Shin. Yahushua is the water of life, but the last is the fire, the consuming fire. The letter Shin represents the fire. The Lamed represents the good shepherd, just like Mashiach, Yahushua is the door, the gate. The last is the good shepherd, and the Vav as the son of man coming in the 6th millennium. Remember that the letter Vav has the numerical value of 6. And if we were to write Shlomo, I was looking at something. First, it has the Ma. Remember how those who follow the studies a lot, that the question Ma in Hebrew is what, or I'm gonna have to delete this. What, right? And me is who. The me in Hebrew represents Yahushua HaMashiach, and the Ma represents the second manifestation. The first Mashiach, the last Mashiach. If we take away the two mems for Mashiach, we have Yah, right? So Yah coming as two Mashiach. Mashiach ben Yehuda and Mashiach ben Yosef. The me and the ma, the who and the what. Who reveals who is Yahweh, and the other one reveals what Yahushua said. So ma is part of Shlomo, and also is part of Moshe, divided by the letter Shin, which is the fire, which was also on Shlomo, right? With the Lamed, which is the letter for, I repeat, the Good Shepherd teaching and other things. So several connections there that I find interesting. Now I wanted to go back here. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, the fast of the 4th, the fast of the 5th, the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th. Mentions 4 fasts that they would do, so they would afflict themselves during those days. And Yahweh is prophesying those days will be a time to rejoice. Through Yahweh, through Yahushua, Yahweh will turn those days of sadness into days of joy, which we kind of see in the parable of the prodigal son, when it seems to be speaking of the time when Yom Kippur, which is the time of affliction, the main day of affliction in the whole year, will become a day of joy. So thus said Yahweh of hosts, the fast of the 4th, the fast of the 5th, the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th are to be joy and gladness and pleasant appointed times for the house of Yahudah, the chosen few, and joy and gladness, similar to truth and peace. Yahweh mentions 2 things always as to represent first and last. Joy and gladness, verse 19. Once again, let me just see real quick. It says, le sazón, ul simcha. Le sazón. So this is joy and gladness. These 2, like I mentioned, represent, and that's why I wanted to come and see, last and first. In this case, you see this one is simcha. Simcha, that represents Mashiach, Yahushua. Because if we get simcha, and then, for instance, put the letter Yud right here, it says, I will be happy. Let me see if I take the, hey, same. So, Yizmach. That is, I know I took this one away because this is the noun. Simcha, joy. But if I take away the hey and put the yud, you saw that actually if I keep the hey, the meaning remains, but I just wanted to add the yud, which is the 3rd person future, using the word as a verb. That's why I will be happy. I will rejoice. Now, so my point is, this is the same verb. Well, it was a noun, but in Hebrew, noun they turn to verbs, and this is the case here. If I take this yud from this verb using the word simcha and take it away from there and put it here, and then get this one and put it here, we get Messiah. So the only way for us to be able to rejoice in the future is if we have Messiah. He who has Messiah, he will rejoice. He is Mach. All right. So Yismach from Simcha represents Mashiach. The other one represents the last, the coming of the last. And here we have the duplicate of the fire, right? The consuming fire, 2 fires, as in the second manifestation as a fire. By the 6th millennium being the Son of Man, coming from Nun. Remember that is the letter Nun, but there was a person named Nun, which is the ancestor of Yahushua ben Nun, right? The one known as Joshua. He was a representation of the first through his name and a representation of the last through his genealogy. So Joshua, the son of Nun, is also an ancestor of the last. So the last comes from the tribe of Nun. Nun also represents a fallen one, meaning the prodigal son. Even more when you see that it is the last letter, so that's why it goes down the line, because the Nun is normally written like this, but when it is at the end of a word, then it is written this way. So let me write it without the vowel points. So we have the fire, the double portion of fire. This Chesh is pretty much 6. So by the 6th millennium, the 6th day, Chesh, by the 6th millennium, the double portion of fire, the consuming fire, would come as the Son of Man, as a descendant of Nun, being the prodigal son. All right. So that's how that other word connects to the last. Continuing. Says, so are to be joy and gladness. Once the first and the last have manifested, then all the days that were to remember affliction and to pray for the well-being of our people, etc., they will become days to rejoice, because there won't be any time of sadness ever again. And pleasant appointed times for the house of Yahudah, and they shall love the truth and peace. Finally, because so far they have loved falsehood and drama, not to say war. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, peoples shall yet come, inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of the one go to another, saying, let us earnestly go and pray before Yahweh and seek Yahweh of hosts. I myself am going. Imagine how beautiful when people from all over the world will finally want to go and see the Almighty through his Son and through his servants, the chosen few, right? It will be wonderful, so beautiful. The nations will remain, and they will talk among themselves, and they will say, let us go and see what it is. Let's see how we can honor such a mighty one, which we didn't believe in or didn't accept or whatever. And the inhabitants of the one go to another, saying, let us earnestly go and pray before Yahweh and seek Yahweh of hosts. I myself am going. And many peoples and strong nations shall come to seek Yahweh of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before Yahweh. Like I said, a fulfillment of this prophecy happened during the second temple, no doubt. But that was a low or poor fulfillment of it, the temporal one. There will be one fulfillment in the end times when it will remain so till eternity, meaning people will go to Jerusalem to seek Yahweh forever. Thus say Yahweh of hosts, in those days 10 men from all languages of the nations take hold, yes, they shall take hold of the edge of the garment of a man, a Yahudi, saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. Wonderful. And that is what is going to happen. Finally, it will be clear who is the true mighty one and who are his people, so that there is no confusion as there is at the moment when Revelation says those who claim to be Yahudim yet are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. It says Yahweh Sabaoth in those days. 10 men. 10 men, that represents all humanity, all the nations. But it's interesting that he uses 10 and not 7, like earthly completion, and now using heavenly perfection. as in all the nations will be together to follow the kingdom of heaven, to want to be part or connected in a way, just like it says here, through us. Through us, they will connect with Yahweh. The wings. So yeah, pretty much the corners of the garment, the edge of the garment. And remember that we will be clothed with new bodies, which are given to us by Mashiach, which are like his. So we will be connected to Yahweh through Mashiach, and the nations through us. And well, in the middle will be the many. So the nations, the many, us, then Mashiach, then Yahweh. So thus said Yahweh of hosts, in those days 10 men from all languages of the nations take hold. Yes, they shall take hold of the edge of the garment of a man. A Yahudi saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. Okay, John 4:22. Let me go to John 4:22 real quick. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because the deliverance is of the Yahudim. Yes.